Okay, I hope everyone's happy with how their character's starting to shape up already. I'm quite happy, but I think it's time we finally start moving on to getting these boots looking more like, well, boots and what we want them to look like. So, I've gone ahead and pulled up some old concept art that we did. So here it is here. This is the kind of concept art that I just had just drawing from my mind based off the references that we had. You might remember this. And this was the kind of shape of the boot that I was looking to go for. And now we're pretty much reaching the point where we'd have to try and substitute somewhat, but also add on to what we've done with the drawings here with some photographic references, because of course how we draw something may not always be represented in reality, and because this is a realistic character, we're kind of beholden to the laws of reality. And that goes for both the boots and the gloves. So, just took a bit of time to go ahead and scour the internet for the types of boots and gloves I'm looking for, and lo and behold, I didn't quite find what I was looking for, but I managed to find elements of what I'm looking for, and here we are here. I've compiled them into this new pure ref kind of board for us here. So we'll start with the boots first of all. So you can see that of the boots I've found, the kind of hangovers here are not exactly the same. They're not separate like around the concept art. They're very much together, okay? Either they're one kind of slab of leather wrapped all the way around, or they're kind of tied at the front or at the back. And I think, being tied at the front kind of looks a little bit goofy. So I'm sort of thinking that, well, I don't know if I like that design anymore. I don't know if when we come to 3D space, if we can get something looking like this. And honestly, I'm starting to feel a little bit unsure now about how confident I am with the flaps there. But having said that, I think it will still work. So we'll persevere with those flaps anyway, see how they turn out, but I'm practically going to ignore what these flaps look like here. I'm just going to come up with my own, if you like, okay? But in terms of the actual boot itself, I want the boot to be representative of this kind of image here. So you can see those, it's kind of thick, possibly cowhide leather, it's kind of semi-gloss, it's got thick folds in it and things like that. You could argue that you could have done some of these boots in Marvel's Designer, but to be frank with you, that skill is beyond me, so I'm going to replicate these folds in ZBrush. And I'm basically going to operate on the principles of, you see how this boot over here, which is just a boot I happen to find several images of. This is an actual product you can buy. I believe it came from Amazon. So finding all these different images of the same boot is a real treat, because you can see every angle. You see here how it's basically held together with a zip. Well, back in the day we didn't have zips, so I'm going to elect to use, basically it's going to be one tubular version of a cylinder just all the way around, but it's going to be tightened by these leather straps at the top. And that's similar here. See, this leather strap's almost just a fake, essentially. So it just stops at the zip, but the one for our character will actually go all the way around, and it will sort of insert into the front part there and just come out the sides, or just somewhere else, basically. And that will actually be used to tighten the boot. Okay, and the same around the heel as well. Now this shoe is here because I like the shape of the foot, and that's the kind of shape I'm going to replicate. And I also like how the folds have been done here as well, how they look. But of course our boot is all the way up to the knee. This just sits around the ankles, so it's going to be more like this. So you can see it's kind of a combination of the two. And this here, the one with the laces, that's a sore thumb. It's standing out there. It's not like the rest of them. Why is that? Because this is my plan B. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the characters I've made before, but I love giving my characters boots, and it's always boots with laces, but I have had enough of boots with laces. I just want to make a pair of boots that's not got laces on it. So that's my plan B. If I do all this and it looks awful, there's my plan B, okay? Go back to laces. But I'm determined to actually make boots that don't have laces. Over to the gloves. You might remember before when some of the designs incorporated a sleeve that maybe went all the way up the arm, or maybe I briefly mentioned that. So just touching on that, that would have been the type of glove I was thinking of there, kind of like a fencing arm sort of, but in the end I decided not to go with that. I want these more leather gauntlets here, and you can see they're pretty thick. They look like kind of aviator's gloves, or perhaps driving gloves or what have you, but you see here basically where you almost got like this kind of thicker leather part here, and that's basically where we've got on the character design. We've got that kind of bit sticking out there, or here for example. Yeah, so we've got the glove. So I've got this here to basically act as a reference for the type of glove, what it should look like, just for the hand part, and then for the kind of vent brace itself, we'll kind of look at that a little bit later on. Okay, but that's basically my thoughts going forward for this. Okay, so we'll put that to one side, and we'll start with my all-time favorite. We'll start with the boots. Okay, so here we are, we've got the boots now, so we can see that this is completely not the correct shape. Okay, I just put that side by side for you. You can see it's somewhat there, but it's obviously not very on point. Okay, so we've got to go fix that. So let me just make this smaller, and I'll keep this here so you can kind of compare what's going on. So basically just getting that angle there. You can put it in the background, absolutely, but for now I don't think I need to. I'm just going to head and frame that. And let's go ahead. So immediately what we've got to do, we've got to change the shape up. So I'm going to go straight to my move tool. And we basically need to kind of push down this area here and then bring the toe up a little bit. But you can see we're kind of dragging the rest of it. So actually we need a bit more volume there. And we can achieve that with the clay buildup tool. But it's always a bit chaotic for me. So I just always like to reduce the strength of that tool just in case it starts getting ahead of itself. I might even be tempted to use the inverse somewhere here just to get the general shape, and you can see smoothing it down kind of solves any particular problems you might encounter. Okay, so at the moment there it kind of looks like a bit of a floppy sock, which is not what we want. So let's come in with our trim dynamic brush, and we'll just kind of trim away the front here, something like that. Okay, keep that a bit of a flatter looking wall. There we go. So already just by doing a little bit of that, we can see that we've got more of a boot shape, even though it looks still a little bit stretched and long. Okay, so if we just solo this now, we can see that actually we do want to increase the kind of the depth per se. Okay, so you can use your clay buildup tool for that, but I'm going to use the move brush actually, because I just prefer using the move brush a bit more. So I'm going to kind of do a very soft mask around the back there, and I'm just going to pull it forward, and I'm choosing forward because the toes are already very long. I just need to make the rest of the boot sort of match that depth. Okay, so I'm pulling it along, something like that. Now that's naturally going to make it quite sharp looking at the front, but of course boots back then that just kind of wrapped around your leg, it did kind of sort of sharpen out at the front. Okay, because of limited techniques back then. Okay, so just kind of raise it up, just do your best to try and match the shape of what you can see there. And then now we need to address the heel. We need to put the heel further back there like that. Okay, and I'd say generally speaking we could afford to take our inflate brush and just increase the volume on the top of the boot, just in general, just to see what that does for us. Let's de-solo that, and we can see there now that that is the shape of the boot. That's not so bad. That's looking okay. It's not so bad. It's looking a bit more like an actual shoe now, rather than just a floppy old sock or shoe or foot. Okay, but I think I might just run it through a geometry remesh just to see what it will do with the front part here. Let's see if it gives us any more interesting results. Yeah, it's okay. I'll undo that. I'll keep it to the same amount of polys. Okay, so there we go. It's kind of picked up on the merging of the toe there. That's okay. That's alright. That's not too bad. Okay, now let's go ahead and address the sole, because the sole's very important to get right, like I mentioned previously. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of move this a bit further back where it has to be. And let's just pay attention to the folds here. So it's basically almost, well, it's almost at an incline here, and it comes down and it's kind of really tucked in here, then it swoops down quite a bit, and then it curls back up again. Okay, so that's the kind of shape we're looking at here. It can help perhaps to go into orthographic mode, although I would advise not staying in that mode too long, but it can be helpful just to kind of get just shapes right, essentially. Okay, and you can see that in orthographic mode we can see the other side isn't quite playing ball. Now the other side isn't going to be absolutely identical. The shoes are not the same either side. We can have a look here and see how that's informed. We can see it's roughly the same, so let's go to the other side and we'll just try our best to try and match what we see on the other side there. Okay, something like that. And you can see that actually there seems to be a mass in the middle that's affecting everything else here. So that looks not too bad actually. That looks in line with the other side and what we've gone ahead and kind of put into position there. So it's more the mass in the middle that's kind of distorting the shape of the sole right now, which actually is good news, because that means the the shape of the foot is pretty much there. We just need to take care of this on the bottom now. And this is why having such low polygon counts is really helpful here, because it is much easier to simply just go in and correct all this. So let's just mask the edges off, because we don't want to affect the edges. And we'll just kind of come in here, and don't worry if you go overboard with flattening this out. That's important at the moment. We just need to kind of get it so that we can see the shape that we want, and then we can worry about adding any volume that we may wish to in a minute. Okay, so there we go. We've got the heel of of her foot sticking through now, which is normal. We'll have that obviously because it's quite round as opposed to the sole, which is quite flat. So now we've got to create an extra block on the bottom here. Now there's lots of different ways you could do this. You could use a square and what have you and kind of extrude it. I'm going to try the extrusion method first. So let's go solo. Let's just select the back heel there. We'll take more than we need because again that wiggle room is essential. Okay, let's just make sure that's properly masked, otherwise it won't count. Okay, and I'm hoping that we get a decent extraction here. Let's go to extract, and let's extract. So we've got a strange looking extraction. That's not too bad though, having all things considered. Let's move the smoothness down to 0. And you can see it's extracting out also in the kind of not just straight down, so it's taking in some of the mask up here. So let's just demask some of that at the top. Just tell them that we don't want the mask around the edges. We're just concerned about extruding downwards. We don't want anything on the sides. Let's try that again, and there you go. That's basically extruding a basic heel. Okay, again, don't worry about it if it's low poly. We just want essentially the kind of right height, so maybe we might even go 0.025 and we'll try that. And yeah, that's a bit better. That's starting to get more in line with the front part. Then we'll hit accept, and there's our heel. It's rough, very rough, but it is our heel. Okay, so let's unsolo that, and now you can just kind of tidy it up, tuck it away and whatnot. Keep it low poly still as you make these fundamental changes, because it will be easier. But of course any kind of heel doesn't widen as it goes out, it kind of shortens as it goes down. Okay, or kind of what should we call it, it's not shortens, it gets thinner, more narrow as it goes down. So let's just do some reshaping here. Okay, so we can determine the final shape of this a little bit later on. It's not critically important right now. And we can just tuck whatever the top ends of that in there. Or actually, you could just move them down so that the top ends exist in the actual sole there. Okay, so it's a little bit long. I want to push it back a little bit. And I'm still in orthographic mode here, as you can see, so I can see how both sides are getting affected. Let's just have a look at that. Yeah, the heel is somewhere in the right place, maybe a little bit further forward. Okay, and let's just kind of change the shape a little bit so it's a bit more accurate. You can see here the low poly aspect of this really assisting in this. Could you imagine if this was hundreds of thousands of polys? You'd be here all day. So it's a good job it's not. Okay, and it's got like a kind of round end to it, so we haven't got enough polys of that just yet, so we'll just leave it generally like that for now. But also you can see it's kind of bowing out, so let's fix that a little bit. Let's kind of bring it in. Okay, and here as well, not very flat. Okay, and then let's bring that out a bit more. Okay. Okay, so that's not too bad. Right, let's have a look at this. Let's determine how low we want this to go. Possibly even slightly lower than what it is currently right now. So let's maybe bring that down a bit more. Oh, we don't want to go too overboard, so let's just be a bit careful about how low we put this kind of arch, and we obviously have to move the foot to reflect the new depth. So try to find that line that just basically sits above the sole, okay, and you'll kind of get a decent effect out of it. I'm just looking at that now and just scrutinizing. Is that too much of an angle? I'm kind of in two minds about it. I'm not entirely sure. I like it, and at the same time I don't, which of course is very typical of me. I hope you guys don't have so much deliberation as I do. It's extremely annoying, so I hope you give yourselves an easier time. But yes, I think, let's zoom out a bit. Let's look like on a big, that's okay. It looks a bit strange up close, but I think overall, in light of the rest of the design, it looks okay. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's okay. Right. Okay, cool. Right, once that's done, it's time to look at the actual sole here. And what I'll do, just to make sure we're working in a non-destructive way, we'll just duplicate it. Just so if anything catastrophic does happen, we can always go back. And I'm keen to now subdivide this a little bit. So I've subdivided it. Have I subdivided it once? I have. Yes, but it didn't seem to register. So let's do that again. Make sure nothing's masked. Subdivide. There we go. Okay, so now what we should be able to do is let's just go with the pinch tool, and we'll just make sure everything's the same thickness all the way around. Okay, just use your eyes, kind of eyeball it, make sure it's the same thickness. Well, make sure, but just try your best to get it the same thickness roughly all the way around. Okay, remember you can use the inverse as well, although you will have different, your mileage will vary on that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so it's got creased edges for us, which is nice. If you smooth this now, it just goes round like that because it's not enough polygonal data. But as you increase the polygon count, you can actually start to smooth the edges, and just the edges will get smoothed, you see. So if we go, we don't want to Z remesh, that's the wrong button. We want to divide it. If we now at about 87,000 polys, start to smooth it now, what you'll see is happening here is that just the edges are being smoothed now. Okay, so that's a nice way of doing that as well. And if you want smooth edges, just bring the subdivision down, but maybe just be careful about your smoothing intensity, and you can make those edges even rounder. Okay, so it's not affecting the kind of walls of the sole, it's just affecting the kind of uppermost and lowermost edges, right? So when you bring it back, it looks quite round. Let's turn dynamic off. There you go. Okay, right, and then we're basically going to do the same thing, but for the heel. We're going to take advantage of that kind of crease or that kind of line in there as well to help us out. So with this heel, let's Z remesh it because there's not much vertical information. So let's just we'll double the polygon count. We'll Z remesh that and see what we get. Okay, we get it's a bit wibbly wobbly. Not great. Not gonna lie. Was expecting better, but I mean, never mind. We'll just raise that heel up, maybe from the back ever so slightly. I mean, ever so slightly, something like that. And let's keep it the same. We'll tell it to Z remesh. Okay, we are getting better results now. That's a bit better. Okay, and what you could actually do here, depending on what kind of heel you want, and again, let's just go and look here. So this heel, that's pretty solid, so we don't want it too round. Okay, but we also don't want it too, what could we call it, too sharp as well. So let's see what just smoothing this gives us now. So a little bit of a round heel, perhaps a bit more worn, a bit more well used, which of course our character, or this character here, is definitely going to be fitting that bill. It's very well used shoes. Okay, and now that we've got more vertical data here, we can actually create this jut a little bit, and you guessed it, we're going to use the inflate brush for that. Okay, but of course we can also use the move tool just to kind of adjust that angle a little bit more. Okay, and anything that's raised up here, you can of course use the move tool. And I did say before, did advocate the fact it was low poly, it was easy to maneuver and change the shape of. But of course, as you want more deliberate shapes, it is always helpful to have more kind of resolution to play with, generally speaking. Okay, and now what do we do with the shoe that's kind of coming through the sole here? You guessed it, we just standard tool that out into oblivion. Okay, so now we've got a boot that looks a lot more like a boot. The only issue is this isn't flat on the floor, which means if she stepped right now, she'd tip over because that's not at the same level. And we could bring a floor in there and you can see exactly what the issue is. Now, it's up to you. I think the heel has to give way here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try the heel, though it's a little bit off center, so I'm going to frame that again. Let's unlock that. Bring the little gizmo down to the heel. And we'll zoom in and we'll use this. Instead of using the move tool, we'll just simply do this, which is a bit more helpful this time. And you can see it's actually raising the floor for us. And that's roughly, maybe a bit more up. There we go. That's roughly about right. Now, okay, the shape has changed a little bit. So let's change the heel. Okay, put it further back. Something like that. Okay, let's take the floor off. Let's put perspective back on. And there we go. Okay. So I haven't done any detail to the tops of the boot there. We've just gotten the kind of foot sitting correctly. I've still got the kind of pointy nose I was after since the concept art there. I'll just kind of bring the heel out a bit more. Just do your best now to try and make sure the sole still wraps around the rest of the shoe quite nicely there. Okay, so that the shoe does seem to kind of tuck into the sole still where it needs to. There's none of this kind of overreaching part there of over there. I would sort of suggest you move the heel of the shoe over rather than moving the sole, because you want the heel to overflow the shoe a little bit just in general. I'm very particular about my boots, I must say. Okay, so there you go. It's starting to look a lot less like a foot now and actually more like a boot. Okay, it's just lacking some of that much needed detail.